real meaning are going to be consumed in the movement and take on meanings that are total mutations of what we're talking about. So we're going to have to keep inventing and reinventing words that have real meaning. So inclusion, I have a horrific example. Somebody told us about an inclusion program that consisted of having students with labels watching other students through a one-way mirror, and they call that an inclusion program, and we're proud of it. I mean, these people have lost it. But so, the word has been mutilated beyond recognition already. So there's that kind of an issue. Second one is financial. Inclusion and lots of other things can be used to cut back. That is not the purpose of the exercise. The purpose is to give kids and to give all of us a future. Figure out how to live together. And it can be used politically as a cutback mechanism. That's not fair, that's not inclusion, that's dumping. We've got to get beyond that. And we've got to be careful that it isn't used to trap and cut off people. Like right now, one of the things that is happening in some places is people are saying, well, okay, we'll take the easy kids. And everybody has their own particular list of labels, but they'll integrate or whatever they're going to do with a few people, but then we get to behavior problems, and everybody has their particular list of that too. But we make a list and we do the same stupid thing all over again. I mean, behavior kids, whatever that means, need to be with the other kids more than anybody else because they've likely got real issues they need support on. And if you stick them all in a room together, they're going to master horrific behavior. They've got to learn how to manage it. And the other kids who don't have those behaviors have to learn how to live with that if we're going to learn how to live together. Coming to balance on those kinds of issues is a real struggle. And there are real traps that are built into a lot of our thinking right now. We've got to have some courage to deal with some difficulty. It won't be easy, but we've got to learn to live together. And that means everybody's sitting down and sweating it through. And there are just lots of us who are lazy, waiting for the pension plan to kick in. That is not the right answer. We need to do some hard work. Sitting on your thumb is pretty boring. We actually have to do some hard work. And when you do it with other people, it's pretty interesting. I mean, neat things happen, and we just have to have the courage to get on with it. It's not going to happen in a minute. There's no microwave solution. We're going to have to struggle with paradox. I mean, easy example. Paradox, we want inclusive schooling, we want inclusive communities, and then it turns around that maybe some black kids or some Aboriginal kids or whomever may have to pull back for a little while to their own school or their own community so they can gain the strength to come back and be fully integrated. And that sounds like, well, they're being excluded. Well, maybe they need the strength to do that. Maybe they need not to have racist attacks every day to be strong enough to face that and live through it. And we're going to have to allow and nurture the kind of contradiction and struggle that allows that to happen so that we can learn to live with one another. I think we're thinking in a broader context. I think I came from, I stumbled into literacy a long time ago, and that stumbled into a whole bunch of stuff around corrections, and that came into disability-related issues. And what I'm discovering now is that it's bigger than that. So for us, change is sort of, I think, our new theme. We're interested in how do we deal with change, and dealing with diversity is one of the strategies to help us learn how to change, because we've got some institutional structures that do not work, and we need to reinvent them. We need to take some of them down, but we need to reinvent some others. And that's bigger than any issue. Therefore, we have to figure out and help people to build new kinds of alliances, because some of the old structures simply don't work. Some of the new ones haven't been invented, and nobody alone is going to be able to do that. So, if anything, I think what we were doing before was right, but not big enough. And it's more global rather than less. And that's more frightening because we've managed to work with groups in some pretty interesting and strange places. I mean, we've worked literally on every continent and in cultures. We were doing this in the Canadian Arctic with a group of Inuit, and they they're wonderful people who were very humble. And they said, would it be okay, in very, very good English, if they did their graphics in syllabics, which is the written form of Inuktitut? And I said, yeah, it'd be great. And there was suddenly this little twinkle, and a whole bunch of elders started to twinkle, and off they went, and they were doing this stuff. And I said, what's it about? They said, oh, we're not telling. Nobody here, none of you whiteys can read the syllabic, so we can do our real planning right in front of you. And they were giggling and having a great time. And I thought, we finally made it. We're finally able to cross some of those boundaries, because they are actually planning in 1999 to create, and it's happening, the first Aboriginal state in the world. It's going to be Nunavut. And I've been involved with it accidentally for 20 years, and there I was with the planners sitting, and they're doing the whole thing in Inuktitut, and I can't even look inside, and I'm helping them to do it, and it was wonderful. And I think that's what we can do. And inclusion can help do that, because what we can do is mobilize and give skills to some people who have great heart, but they actually need to be able to do stuff, and that's build alliances and have the skills to run a good meeting to get things done. And it was amazing to watch those people way up in the Arctic suddenly click on and say, we can do this, and off they went, and they're doing it. It's wonderful. Leadership can come from anywhere. I likely used to think it had to come from the top, because that assumed some kind of vertical hierarchy. I don't believe that anymore. So I think it can come from anywhere. However, in many of the structures we have, and our medical structures and educational structures tend to be extraordinarily vertical hierarchies. The power of leadership is terrifying to me, because we have watched and worked with school systems, hospital systems, and other structures where if you have weak leadership, the system and the children and the patients, whoever all, are just being mangled by the hour. And you're almost powerless to stop it. And if you can trade leaders and bring in someone who can motivate, and it's not a budget item, bring in a competent, caring leader, and the place overnight transforms. It's frightening, the power of leadership in that sense. But not to be too depressed about it, particularly in, whether it's a nursing corridor or a classroom or wherever it happens to be. A single person can sort of close the door and say, we can do it. We'll make it do anyway. And they can make a huge impact on a life. It's sort of my Charlie story. Charlie could reach out to anybody for 5 minutes and make a difference. We can all do that. Leadership can happen anywhere with all of us.
I'm Darrell, this is my wife Janet, and we are up here from Texas. We have moved recently from Louisiana to Texas, so we're going through a little bit of culture shock at the moment. We have one son named Bryce, who's 10 years old. He has severe cerebral palsy, and so that's the genesis of our interest in disability issues.
Currently, the social service delivery system in the United States is such that you can put your family member into an institution, which I call them kennels for people, and the state and federal government will take over complete financial responsibility for caring for this person in an institutional setting. If you're trying to keep your family member at home, in the case of a child, your income is deemed against that child, so the child usually can't get social services to support living in the community. But families usually don't have enough money to pay for those things in the private market. For a family of 3, The SSI cutoff level for eligibility is about $13,000. There's a publication called What Would You Choose from Mouth, and their assessment of the national average for care of a child in an institutional setting is $80,000 a year. So what you have is a family is expected to do with $13,000 a year what a nursing home gets $80,000 a year to do.
No, that's not actually correct. A family is expected to support themselves and the person with a disability for $13,000 a year, whereas a nursing home would get $80,000 a year just to care for the one person. So it's even far more tedious and difficult than that. It's a virtual impossibility to reach this level of services that people are getting in institutions.
So what we're trying to do is impact the social service delivery
Can
system.
you start again?
What we're trying to do is impact the social service delivery system through governmental funding, and we're letting groups like ADAPT, American Disabled for Tenant Programs Today, we're letting them organize it, and we're just adding our voices to theirs, so that the supports that are provided for a person in a nursing home setting follow that person into the community. Right now, that doesn't exist. You can either put your child into an institution so your child can get the services that they need, or you can keep your child at home and watch them go without.
But I think there's a larger issue too, and that is raising people's consciousness about what it means to be human, what it means to be a person. I tell people that I measure my age as a person by the age of my son, because it was with his birth and my recognition of the problems that he has because of his disability that I really understood what it meant to be human. Up until that point, I had given really no thought to what it meant for people to rely on one another, to be dependent upon one another. And Bryce has really no ability to do anything physically for anyone. He needs constant care. And yet, being in such close proximity to him has let me learn that, hey, he's a person and he has value too. And he's wonderful, he's great. So how can we as a society really be human, be people, if we treat people with disabilities as if they're disposable? I guess what I'm saying is that it's helped me understand the real value of life and the real business of life. The real business is not about making money. It's not about how rich you are or how big a house you have or how fast you can run or any of those things. It's just because you're here. You have value just because you're alive. And to the extent that we value people with disabilities, I think we set an upper bound on our own value, because at any point we could become disabled. There's a saying that people are tabs, temporarily able-bodied. And the disability community is the only minority that you can join. You're born into all the others. And we just have to get in touch with what it means to be a person, and I think that really has to do with love and with treating everyone as if they have value in spite of what they can give you. Because if you value people only for what they can give you, then that says that you're really not valuing them at all. You're only valuing what you can get out of them. You're not valuing them as a person at all. I think that we foster change by changing people's minds. I like to talk about, I'm a teacher, and I talk to my students about this issue, and that is just how do you get change in the world? And if you think about it, there are only three ways that you can change the world. And all of them involve changing people's behaviors. And it doesn't do any good to try and get rocks to do things because they're inanimate. And animals, although they can be tamed, it's pretty difficult to tell a herd of sheep what to do. You can, however, get people to do things to change the world. And there are only three ways to do that. You can force them to do it, you can bribe them to do it, or you can convince them it's the right thing to do. And I'm about changing people's minds to a right way of thinking, because if I force people to do it, if I make a law, somebody will break it, because a law or force is only good as long as the person fears the consequences. I could pay them to do it, right? I could pay people to hire the disabled, right? Well, they're only going to do that as long as the money is there, or if there's something that they're getting out of it that they want. If you run out of what they want, or they lose interest in what you're offering, hey, the game's over, because they're going to go off and do just what they want. But if you can get to their mind and get to their ideas and change that to where they really understand, to where they get it, right, where it becomes an idea that they embrace, then you have permanent change. You have made them realize that it's a good thing to do just because it's a good thing to do, not because of what they get out of it or because of what they avoid, but just because it's the right thing to do. And I think we really have to work on changing people's beliefs and people's attitudes that result from those beliefs before we get really meaningful, long-lasting change.
I want to say something about families, because families are the building blocks of our societies in any country, and whether the families have a person with a chronic condition or not. And we're not supporting any of our families. We're not supporting the families who have family members with chronic conditions. We're not supporting the families, typical families who do not have any family members with chronic conditions. We have families who have a disabled family member, and if you can do it on your own, fine, and if you can't, you put your family away in a nursing home or an intermediate care facility for the mentally retarded. Families with typical members are having their children raised in child care centers, and child care centers are not set up to develop young minds. They're not set up to allow children to do experiences that teach themselves, which is what children are built to do. We're raising our next leaders in child care centers to be disassociated from others, and it's going to continue this agenda that we currently have, hooray for me, the hell with you. And we're breaking up our families, and when we break up our families, and when we have mom over here, and we have dad over here, and we have the kids over there, our society is unraveling now. The more we continue to fracture families, the faster it's going to unravel. It's hard to know what someone with different needs actually needs unless you've walked in their shoes. So one way for people who are temporarily able-bodied to assist someone with a disability is to ask them, you know, what can I give you that will help you participate fully in your community? Another way to understand that is get in a wheelchair and tie your hands together and your feet together so that you can't use them. And then have someone assist you in living. Have someone else choose what you're going to eat, how hot or cold it's going to be, how much it's going to be on the spoon. If you want to go over there and look at toys, you have to have someone push you. You have to have someone help you play. There are ways that people who do not have disabilities can understand what the person with the disability needs and what life is like for them. First, you have to be willing to understand.
The thing that I would like people to come to understand more than anything is that people with disabilities are people just like us, and that we all have value, and that value is not negotiable. We need to recognize this and treat each other with dignity and respect, and really to get on with the business of life, which is about loving one another rather than about using one another, which I'm afraid is where we are today in our society. If we could just get that message across, I think the world would be a different place. If people acted in loving ways towards other people, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. It wouldn't be necessary, because people who had needs would have those needs met. Instead, we live in a world of artificial scarcity where those people who have things don't want to part with them. And it's about what I've got and what you don't. It's about winners and losers. There's a dichotomy that we have. We're no longer in this together. We're in this separately, where each of us is competing to get something from the other person. And I really think that's a terrible way to live your life. It's an awful world to be in. We could live in a different world if we chose to, and that choice involves making loving decisions about each other and about our interactions with each other. I think that's really the bottom line for me.
something that one of our leaders, unfortunately Shafiq Asante is no longer with us, but a concept that he has introduced to us that's a very valuable concept is called coming down from the mountain. Because people come to conferences like this and other conferences across the country, and they sit in a lecture-style situation and they listen to all these ideas. Shafiq was one of the first people to address, what are you going to go home and do? When you come down from Mount Primrose or Mount Sheraton, what are you logistically going to do? Now, one of the things I ask people to do is write to their legislators and tell their legislators, I want my tax dollars spent keeping people in their homes rather than burying them in institutions. But if we're really going to make the kind of changes that people with disabilities and all of us need, we're going to have to ask people at conferences like this, you're learning very useful information, this all sounds good, what are you going to do when you come down from the mountain? They have to have that very clearly in mind.
Well, it all comes down to the decisions that we make in our lives. If we as individuals make good decisions, if we make wise decisions, then in the aggregate those decisions are going to add up to something good. If on the other hand we make decisions which are selfish, which are narrow, and which serve only our own interests, then we really shouldn't be surprised if in the end we end up with a world we don't like. Because little things add up to big things. And it's really in the little things that we change the world. It's what I do right now. It's what I do tomorrow with you and with others around me that makes a difference. If I can touch the lives of other people in a positive way and help them to understand what life is really about, then that spreads. It's a small thing, but if we each do that, then in the end, we'll end up in a better world.